All right, so Australia recently held their federal elections in which Scott Morrison, the far-right Prime Minister of Australia, was successfully ousted by the Labour Party leader Anthony Albanese, as well as seeing massive surges in support for the Green Party in Australia, which, at least in theory, hopefully will be able to form some sort of a coalition government with the new Labour Party leader as the Prime Minister in order to effectively start to begin addressing the climate crisis. So, here from Common Dreams, we got a good breakdown with some details saying Australian progressives hail green slide amid big left wins and Morrison's ouster. So, here from Brett Wilkins, he says, amid the aromatic sizzle of traditional election day democracy sausages, the best tradition in the world, Australians ended 9 years of right-wing rule in Saturday's compulsory federal vote, with climate campaigners and progressives around the world cheering what many called a green slide as the left-wing Greens enjoyed unprecedented ballot box success. And they say Liberal Prime Minister, don't get confused with the naming here, Liberal in Australia, they are very conservative. This is the equivalent of the Republican Party in Australia, but they say Liberal Prime Minister Scott Morrison conceded defeat late Saturday night to Labour leader Anthony Albanese, a career politician who called himself the first candidate with a non-Anglo-Celtic name to ever run for the nation's highest office. And Albanese delivered a victory speech in which he first committed to the Uluru Statement from the Heart, a pro-Indigenous declaration, before vowing to seek our common purpose and promote unity and not fear. And they say, in stark contrast to the administration of fossil fuel champion Scott Morrison, Albanese said that together we can end the climate wars, together we can take advantage of the opportunity for Australia to be a renewable energy superpower. So obviously amazing on the rhetoric, yet to be seen exactly how far this guy is going to be willing to go in actually addressing climate change. But again, hopefully he is pulled to the left by the electoral successes of the Greens in this election. So, you know, he's not a socialist or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination, but nonetheless, he is to the left of Scott Morrison, and again, hopefully will be pulled even farther to the left when it relates to climate. But they continue saying Amanda McKinsey, the CEO of the research group Climate Council, declared that the real winner in Saturday's election was climate action, and she said, quote, millions of Australians have put climate first. She said in a statement, now it is time for a radical reset on how this great nation of ours acts upon climate change. And they say with uncertainty over whether Labour would control the 76 seats needed to form a parliamentary majority, the party held 72 seats as of Saturday evening. Australian Greens leader Adam Bant, who was re-elected in his Melbourne House district by more than 20 points over Labour challenger Keir Patterson, signaled his party is willing to talk with Albanese about a possible coalition government again. And they say, quote, the Greens are on track for our best result ever, he told The Guardian, which reports the party's primary vote has increased nationally by 1.9% to 12.3%, so a massive jump in support for the Greens in this election. And they say people have backed the Greens in record numbers and delivered a massive mandate for action on climate and inequality. And finally, they say people are voting to push the next government to go further and faster on climate, and also tackle the housing affordability crisis and get dental and mental health in Medicare. He added a reference to Australia's publicly funded health insurance program. So again, pretty amazing that you have some dramatic increases in electoral success for the nominally leftist party that is trying to aggressively tackle climate change. But again, we'll have to see how this plays out and whether or not they're going to be able to form that coalition government. But compared to Scott Morrison, anything is really superior, especially when it comes to climate action. So just to remind you guys about some of the recent climate catastrophes that have been affecting Australia over the last couple of years, we obviously had those massive fires that were spreading, I think, disproportionately around Western Australia, but also just throughout the entirety of it, in which, as you can see here from the BBC, they say that over 3 billion animals were killed or harmed as a direct result of these fires that were obviously worsened by the ongoing effects of climate change. Also important to note that Scott Morrison has ties to the fossil fuel industry, specifically on coal, which is a major part of Australia's economy, but nonetheless, even people who work in the coal industry, similar to how they are here in the United States, they overwhelmingly understand that coal and fossil fuels more broadly is a dying industry. And so if anybody is going to have sustainable, good paying, hopefully union jobs for the future, that you're going to have to start aggressively transitioning towards towards renewable energy, not just for the obvious benefits of, lessening the dramatic effects of climate change like this, but also on top of that, as Anthony Albanese was indicating there, letting Australia or whatever country you're talking about in question begin to lead the world in renewable energy, which is inevitably going to be the economic future should we have anything closely resembling a sustainable planet to live on. But this was just one example. We also had some massive floods that have been affecting Australia over the last couple of years. So here from Axios, they say deadly climate change fueled floods inundate Australia's east coast. And I mean, you can just see there from the graph just absolutely massive amounts of rain and flooding that you wouldn't have seen if climate change was not in such a disastrous position right now. But this is part of the reason. I mean, both of these in combination over the last couple of years are part of the reason why you then inevitably are going to see an uprising of average Australians who have been affected by the climate crisis start to realize that no, we need something of some sort of a radical change to how our government is operating. We can't just keep going down this downward spiral in regards to fossil fuel usage and worsening the climate crisis. But just to give you another perspective in terms of how atrocious Scott Morrison's government and Australia more broadly has been in tackling the climate crisis, here from the Climate Council, they say, new report, Australia ranks dead last on climate. So, among the developed countries that were involved in the Paris Climate Accord or other climate agreements, for the most part, Australia has been literally among the worst, if not the single worst, in the world in actually substantially addressing climate change. So, not only are they having disproportionately massive effects from climate change, but also they're doing the least about it. So, this is, again, part of an indication why people were starting to get fed up with Scott Morrison's style of governance in relation to this issue. But also, this kind of reminded me of this video from a couple of years ago, which was absolutely amazing. So in the wake of some of these fires that were taking place across Australia, you had entire communities that had their lives completely disrupted and destroyed by these fires, and Scott Morrison decided to travel down to one of these communities and basically got completely heckled and chased out of town by the local people there. So I wanted to go ahead and watch this to give you a perspective in terms of the frustration that average Australians were facing with the Scott Morrison government.
Good. How are you?
I'm only shaking your hand if you give more funding to our RFS. So many people.
I mean, already he literally had to reach down to grab her hand. She was not even going to shake his hand there.
I've lost their home.
We need some help.
We need more help.
You'd be tired. Oh, I don't really want to take that. Oh, well, it's nice to see you. Nice to see you too, mate. Okay, you want to... for a cuppa?
How much money for our forgotten corner of New South Wales, Mr Prime Minister? How come we only had 4 trucks to defend our town? Because our town doesn't have a lot of money, but we have hearts of gold, Mr Prime Minister.
Nah, you're an idiot, mate. You really are.
You haven't getting any votes down here, buddy. You're an idiot. Who votes Liberal around here? Nobody. No Liberal votes. You're out, son. You are out. Good night, Lena. Bye.
What about the people who are dead now, Mr Prime Minister? What about the people who have nowhere to live?
You're not welcome, you
Every single time this area has a flood or a fire, we get nothing. If we were Sydney, if we were North Coast, we would be flooded with donations, with emergency relief.
All right, so I mean, clearly you get the energy there. People are absolutely fed up with Scott Morrison and his style of governance in relation to the climate emergency. So, you clearly see why people would have, moved in this direction towards supporting the Greens in this election. And obviously, I wish that we had more of that type of energy here in the United States. I wish that our corrupt politicians would be getting heckled in the streets like this and would be, chased out of towns when they try to go and do their, disingenuous photo ops, as he was trying to do there very clearly. But credit to the Australian people for standing up to him in moments like that, and also standing up to him at the ballot box and delivering a absolutely massive blow to the conservative wing within Australia, and hopefully at least beginning the process of bringing Australia up from being dead last in terms of tackling climate change and beginning to aggressively transition from fossil fuels, and hopefully at least tamping down some of the dramatic effects that Australians Australians, average Australians, working class people have been facing as a consequence of the lack of action on climate change from the conservatives within this country.